Okay, my name is Jan Gurda. For those who don't know me, I work in Speed team. Today I will tell a little bit about one of Amazon's web services, Identity and Access Management, and second service, CloudTrail. CloudTrail is easier, so we will mainly focus on Identity and Access Management. Our agenda for today is, before we start discussing about Identity and Access Management, we will look at how do we access Amazon Web Services. Later, I will go to Identity and Access Management in more details. After that, we will have I called it labs, but these are more like live demos. I will also mention about best practices which Amazon suggests when working with Identity and Access Management. And at the end, I will look into, I will show you CloudTrail. Okay. How to access Amazon Web Services. So you are all probably familiar with Amazon Web Services console. I presented that during my previous presentation. But the point here is that Amazon is API driven. So there are many channels which we may interact with Amazon Web Services. But there is actually underneath of that, there is one API. In a minute, I will show you other access channels which we may use to interact with Amazon. But the most important thing here is that Amazon is API driven. There is one root account in Amazon. This is master user. So someone who creates Amazon account is automatically root user of this account. And root user is able, root user may add new users, which later may add another users. And root user is also able to close Amazon Web Services account. So we may simply close Amazon Web Services account. All resources created inside that account belong to this account, so are owned by this account. Okay, so as I mentioned a minute ago, what are access channels to Amazon? The most common and the most well-known access channel is Amazon Management Console. This is graphical user interface tool which you may use to interact with Amazon. To log into a Management Console, you need username, password, and optionally multi-factor authentication token. And this picture here presents a screenshot of console. You may go into each particular service and invoke particular actions, but we must remember that underneath your actions are translated to API calls, and not anything may be done in Management Console. There are some actions which you cannot do in Management Console. Another channel is command line interface. Command line interface is command line tool which you may use to interact with Amazon with command line. So this is more for Amazon hackers. To access Amazon Web Services through this command line, you need something like access key and secret key. I will tell about that later. But this is generally pair of keys used for authentication with the same similar to username and password, but more for more mnemonic form of that. Amazon provides very good documentation of client line interface. I would like to show you an example. It provides few commands like copy, move, remove, and this kind of things. And this documentation actually documents whole protocol of Amazon command line interface for S3. So if you are interested with accessing Amazon with command line interface, I advise looking at this documentation. Another access channel are SDKs. SDKs are libraries created for particular programming language: Java, .NET, Python. I know there is a Ruby, few more. These SDKs are maybe also used to access Amazon, to provision new machines, for example, EC2 instance, to change some attributes of these EC2 instances, or to publish message to queue. And for SDKs, you also use access key and secret key for authentication to provide information to Amazon who you are, and Amazon decides what you can do. In one of live demo, I will show you how to use SDK without access key and secret key using roles, but that will be later. And the last one is Query API. Query API is simply RESTful web service which when you form appropriate requests, you may invoke particular actions. It also uses access key and secret key for authentication. And the same as for command line interface, Amazon provides documentation for that operational bucket, for example, and delete bucket. Amazon provides sample queries how to do that. Expected requests, expected response. So if you are so hardcore that you would like to interact with Amazon Web Services through Query API, there is very good documentation about that on Amazon page. And by the way, generally Amazon documentation is very, very good. So if you want to learn new things, if you want to learn new service, simply go to Amazon documentation, to user guide, to developer guide, and go through that documentation. They also provide documentation in PDF and Kindle format, but this PDF and Kindle format are a little bit outdated. So when new feature appears, it may happen that it's not in this Kindle version, but on a web version, it's always the freshest documentation. Okay. So now when we know how to interact with Amazon, another thing is, how do we know that user may do some actions? So if we have access key and secret key, how do we know that this particular user who authenticates with this access key and secret key may invoke particular actions? And this is what Identity and Access Management Service is designed for, to control access to Amazon resources. This is global service, so when you create user in one region, it doesn't matter where you create user actually. When you create user, it's visible in all regions. When you create a group policy, they are visible in all regions. As I said, it controls access to Amazon resources for particular users, for particular roles and groups. It allows to define very granular permissions. So you may, as an example, you may allow particular user to upload data to particular directory of S3 Bucket. This is very granular, and I have demo of that. It also provides multi-factor authentication. So for example, when we have root account, root account may do anything, may create new users, may start dozens of EC2 instances which calculate bitcoins and this kind of things. So to provide security, Amazon introduced multi-factor authentication. So you log in with your user, your password, and later you are asked for multi-factor authentication code. And this multi-factor authentication integrates well with, for example, Google Authenticator, which you may download to your phone. Okay, IAM also manages users who have access to Amazon Web Services. So when you are a big organization, you have different users with different roles. Some users are administrators, some users are financial guys who need to upload reports somewhere. IAM allows you to define these users, to group these users, and assign appropriate permissions to them. IAM also allows for secure access of services, so not only users but also processes and services to Amazon resources. So let's suppose you have application, your service would like to use one of Amazon Web Service resources like Q, like S3 Bucket, like simple notification service, email service, something like that. So IAM allows you to define appropriate permissions for these applications. So for not only for users, but for processes and applications. IAM is PCI compliant, so they have PCI compliance certificate. This is important for credit card data processing. And it's free to use. So what you create in IAM, you don't pay for that. So this is one of there are not many services which are free to use, and this is one of them. Before we start, maybe about that, I will present you console. Okay, and this is dashboard. This is dashboard of identity and access management. So here you have alias. You have link which you may send to your users. This is login link actually. So you send it to your users and it redirects them to login page. And by the way, name of this account, nbookdev, is my personal account. I signed up for Amazon. They provide free tier usage. So for 1 year you have some services for free. And this is my personal. Don't ask me why this is called nbookdev, but this is called nbookdev. Lower you have security status. So my account is not fully secure. Amazon has some kind of indicators which indicate if your account is secure. First of all, they ask you to delete your root access key, so I deleted that. Set up multi-factor authentication, create individual IAM users, groups, and assign permissions and policies to that. But this is just a dashboard. On the left side, we have details. So we may list groups we have in our system. We have users, roles, policies. Identity providers, I will discuss more about that. Account settings also, credential report, and encryption keys. I will discuss about all of that. But I would like to start with users, groups, and roles because these are called IAM identities. Let me go back to my presentation. Okay, so we have 3 types of identities. We have users, we have groups, and we have roles. Users represent person or a service interacting with Amazon Web Service. So in the simplest case, user is simple one of our admins, one of our auditors, one of our employees, one of our cooperators in a team. But we may create user account also for processes which interact with Amazon. So if we have application which runs outside of Amazon, we may create user for that application, and for that user we will assign a secret key and access key. And with the secret key and access key, this application will be, through SDK of course, will be able to interact with Amazon. Group is collection of users. Group is just a collection. If you have 2 administrators, it's better to create group and assign appropriate permissions to the group, not to particular users. And role is very similar to user, but its role it doesn't have credentials. So you cannot use role to authenticate to Amazon. role is defined for authorization purposes inside Amazon, and this is just the set of permissions. Maybe I was talking about users, about access key. Maybe we could now create user. So let's create user. This is not planned live demo, but I would like to show you what is access key, how to create access key, and generally how to create a user. So let's start from creating a new Amazon user. I am logged in to my account. So let's create new user and let's call it SQS administrator. Okay, we have checked generate an access key for a user. So we create new user, and as you can see, access key was generated automatically for this particular user. Access key consists of two parts: key ID, which is something public. It's not public, but it's visible in Amazon console. And secret access key, which is visible only now, and later you will not see this secret access key. This pair, access key and secret key, is used to access Amazon Web Services through a command line interface or through SDKs. So, and we may download access key as a CSV file, but let's not download it. Let's simply close. And we have user here. So we may see this user's details when we click on this user. We see user ARN, this particular unique identifier of this user. We see that user has no password assigned, no groups assigned. In security credentials tab, we see our new access key, but we see only access key ID. We don't see secret key. Let's delete that because I don't want someone to mess with my account, and this presentation is recorded. Okay. In security credentials tab, we may also manage password of particular user. So we may set up password, auto-generated password, or assign custom password. And we may also require user to change password during next sign-in. We may set up multi-factor authentication device. This may be hardware multi-factor authentication device or virtual multi-factor authentication device. It is generally used as something additional to user and password to authenticate to Amazon Web Services. But let's not set it up. I have application downloaded on my mobile phone that manages this multi-factor authentication as a virtual device. Below we have sign-in certificates, which are not so important so far. And we may manage the SSH public keys for Amazon Web Services code commit. This is simply code repository exposed by Amazon. So we have user created, but this user is not assigned to any group. Let's now create new group, and let's call it SQS users. And let's not assign any policy so far. So group SQS user is created. It has no policies, it has no inline policies. I will talk more about that later. And it has no users. So we may assign this particular user, SQS administrator, to SQS users. And I believe that's all. So very simple flow. Create users. You may manage access key in user view. you may assign users to particular groups. What is different between user and role? When to use user and when to use role? So of course we should use user when we have person. When we have person who authenticates to Amazon console, the person who would like to interact with Amazon console with command line interface. When we have employee who would like to give some permissions. In that case, we should use users. It's better to use roles, for example, if we have application deployed on our EC2 instance, and we would like this EC2 instance, this application, to interact with one of Amazon services. We could use user, we could hard code or put access key and secret key somewhere in application configuration, but this is not very secure because we must keep that configuration somewhere in some kind of GitHub or Bitbucket and this kind of thing. So it's better use role there because role says that everything deployed on this particular EC2 instance may interact in that way with these particular services. So this is passwordless or credentials-less authentication. You may use a role also to grant access for federated users. Federated users are users which are not maintained by IAM. Federated users are users maintained by your company, for example, Active Directory system and this kind of things. So you may use roles to grant access for federated users, grant particular permissions. And you may use roles for mobile phone application that make requests to Amazon Web Services. This is quite tricky, but Amazon provides something like provides service called Amazon Cognito, which is a kind of identity provider like Google+, like Facebook. And inside this Cognito, you have users, and you may assign particular role to this user. So you don't have to hard code credentials in your mobile application because it doesn't make sense. It is not safe at all. So you may use roles to assign permissions to particular users, but these users are identified by, for example, email inside this Amazon Cognito web service. Okay, before we will go further, you must know about something very important, something what uniquely identifies particular Amazon resource, and this is Amazon resource name, ARN. ARN is some kind of identifier with particular format which uniquely identifies Amazon resources. There is a web page which presents how does it look like. Let me go to this web page. Okay, so there is whole documentation about ARNs, and for example, this presents format of ARNs. So ARN starts with ARN prefix. Later we have partition. In most cases, that will be simply AWS. For China, Amazon, there is AWS CHN, something like that. For China, probably this is because China is a very specific market. Later we have service, so name of a service, particular service which this resource belongs to. So it may be S3, it may be RDS, IAM, EC2, and this kind of things. Another part of this ARN is region. So in my previous presentation, I told you about what is region. So name of a region. So for example, US East 1, like here. Another part is account ID. So every account has its own ID, and even if my account is identified by name here in dashboard, this account has its own identifier. This identifier is integer value. And later we have resource or resource type / resource. Okay, examples. S3 bucket. We have S3. So in ARN, we have AWS as partition, S3 as service name. For S3, we don't have to specify a region, we don't have to specify account number. We only specify bucket, and inside that bucket we have directories. So we may also, with this ARN, specify directory. So we may specify particular bucket in our directory. In this particular case, we specify everything what is inside development directory inside my corporate bucket. Please be aware that particular EC2 service, like a particular Amazon service like EC2, may have more than one type of resources. S3 has one type of resources bucket, but EC2 has images. So these are Amazon machine images. They have instance. These are running instances. Volumes. There are ELB volumes. There are simply virtual hard drives. So the most important from here is that ARN uniquely identifies particular resource of Amazon, and you may specify anything you create using ARN. IAM policies. So now I would like to talk a little bit about IAM policies, because I told you about users, about groups, and about roles. But inside, when I created user, there was nothing about restricting access for that user. And these are IAM policies which restrict access. So when you create user, group, or role, later you put policies, you attach policies to this particular identities, users, groups, and roles. And IAM policies define very fine-grained privileges for users, groups, and roles. May restrict access to single service, to single resource. IAM policies are defined in JSON format, so they are nice to version. When you have like source code repository, you may have separate directory for IAM policies, and you may put JSONs there, and it versions very nice. Evaluation of these policies is quite simple. So most restrictive policy wins. Everything is denied by default. So when you create user, I deleted this access key, but by default this user could do nothing. So I'm just cautious, but with this user could do nothing by default. And evaluation of policy is first we evaluate explicit deny. So if we have explicit deny to particular resource, access to this resource is denied, even if we have explicit allow later. So explicit deny wins. Explicit allow is on a second in the evaluation. And at the end, this is implicit deny, which is equal to this deny by default. I will show you some sample policies. Okay, so in Amazon's documentation, there is also a very good section about IAM. I learned most of what I'm telling you from there and from Amazon training. So for example, this policy, what it does, allow user to access specific bucket in Amazon S3. So as you can see, this is JSON format. First on the bottom we have version. I will discuss more about that. And later we have statements. Statements is just an array of statements. So we allow user to list all buckets in S3. Later we allow user to list particular bucket and get bucket location for sample particular bucket. So not for all buckets, but for particular bucket. And later we allow to put, get, and delete objects in this particular bucket. So this is very simple. This is very simple example of Amazon policy. Okay, but what policy consists of? So first of all, on the top, you have version. And so far, if I remember correctly, we have two versions. And 2012 10.17 is the latest version. This is what Amazon uses for versioning schemas of policies. So they use it for some kind of JSON schema versioning. If that not sounds ridiculous, but this is what they try to, and they achieve with success. Later we have statements, and statements consist of statement ID, which is unique ID of statement inside of policy, effect, which may be allow or deny access to particular, action, this is particular action for particular service. So every service provides its own set of actions. Like IAM provides action, for example, change password, and S3 provides action list all my buckets. And we may use wildcards for actions, no problem. Later, we have resource. So resource which this policy affects. So in most cases, we have wildcard, but for S3 bucket access, we have particular ARNs, list of ARNs which this policy affects. And there are also other nice features, like conditions. And these are not all. I choose the most important. But conditions are very nice because Amazon allows you to define particular conditions. So not only this particular user wants to may access something, but this particular user who logs in from this particular IP may do something. And in this example, this condition is for last statement. So we allow user to list and get bucket with bucket of confidential data. But this user must use multi-factor authentication. So this two-step, you put user password and multi-factor authentication code. Okay, there are two types. Like I would like now go into classification of policies, because there is no one type of policies. There are actually two types and two subtypes of policies. So one of types of policies are managed policies, which are we may divide into two groups: Amazon Web Services managed policies and customer managed policies. Amazon Web Services managed policies are predefined policies which Amazon provides to you. When you sign up for an account, you have a list of predefined managed policies. And I will show you now these predefined policies. Okay. So let me go to here and here. Okay, and by default, Amazon provides dozens of policies. They are not very fine, they are not very granular. So like full access, read-only access, full access, read-only access, and we may find, for example, S3, full access, read-only access. So they are not very granular. So they are not particular access to this particular bucket, but they are full access to S3 and read-only access to S3. We may use these policies later to extend them, use them as a base for our customer managed policies. And customer managed policies are policies actually created by you. So when you sign up for an account, when you create policy which restricts access to particular resource, this is your customer managed policies. And also difference between these Amazon managed policies and customer managed policies is that these Amazon managed policies may we actually assigned to multiple accounts, because this is kind of global being. And customer managed policies is defined inside your account, so it's not visible outside your account. What's also nice about Amazon managed policies, this is when Amazon updates some product or introduces new product, it introduces changes into managed policies. So it may introduce new managed policies, or it may change existing managed policies. And for customer managed policies, you are responsible by your own to adjust that whenever service changes. Policies are reusable. I have already discussed the difference between Amazon and customer managed policies. policies are managed in one central place in IAM. So we have one central place when these policies are managed. One more nice feature which I would like to show you is that Amazon automatically versions policies. So when you create new policy, let me do a very quick demo. It's not planned demo. So let's create a new policy basing on Amazon managed policies. So let's go back to management console, policies, create policy, copy an Amazon managed policies, select, and let's choose S3 full access. Let's call it Amazon demo and some kind of random postfix. So as you can see, this is simply copy of Amazon policy. It has version, statement, allow whole S3 access for all S3 resources. Let's create this policy. And as you can see, this new policy appeared on our policy list. It's not managed policy because it was created by us. So there is no this Amazon cube here. Let's go. Let's check this policy. So as you can see, this is version 1 of this policy, and policy documents looks as follows. When we edit this policy, like let's add action list all my buckets. Validate, is it valid? Yeah, it's valid. Save. You see that this new policy has version 2, so new version of policy appeared. I believe this was worth to mention here. Yeah, and Amazon automatically updates managed policies, the last point I have already mentioned. We have managed policies, so we have the central policies, but there are also different types of policies called inline policies. These inline policies are not centrally managed, so you cannot assign inline policies to multiple identities. You cannot assign inline policies to many users. There is one-to-one relationship between policy and identity, principal entity. So inside the user, you may create ad hoc policy which is binded only to this particular user and no one else. In our project, we use inline policies. I suspect we used that because it was easy to set up with Ansible and with CloudFormation, and it gives better control. Like you must specify this inline policy explicitly. You don't assign it by accident. But Amazon generally recommends to use managed policies because they are central. They may be reused. We don't have duplicated policies because in our project, when we have 2 users or 2 EC2 instances with inline policies, we actually duplicate these policies. And inline policy, what is next? Okay, so I will show you how to define inline policy now. Okay, so let's suppose we have our SQS administrator user, and in permissions tab we may attach policy. So we may attach our created policy, but this is managed policy. But inline policy, we may ad hoc define new policy. Policy generator, let's select, let's allow, I don't know what we can do. EC2 instance, action, start, or create VPC, doesn't matter. And for particular, okay. And this user has inline policy, but this policy will not be available for any other user. So there is one-to-one relationship between this particular user and this particular policy. How to work with policies? As I said, they are in JSON format, so you may create them in your favorite JSON editor. But as I said, there are some predefined policies which may be used as a base for your own policies. There's AWS Policy Generator. I have just showed you a policy generator. And to validate policy, we may use this validate button. I also showed you this on the bottom. But there is also policy simulator. This is a piece of software provided by Amazon, and it integrates with your account. So when you are signed up to account, you may use this. You may go into this policy simulator and check if this particular policy allows access to this particular resource. Maybe we can have a quick demo of that. So this is policy simulator, and it automatically fetches your own or managed policies. SQS administrator. This is the one I created, and you may choose particular service. So let's see if we may route. With this policy, we may route something for some action for Route 53, and it's denied because this policy is about SQS. So with this policy, you may simulate how in this tool you may simulate how policy is evaluated by Amazon engine.